Welcome to It's a Yes, Making It in Media, the podcast that really helps you get hired and stay inspired in the world of media sales.
Today's episode is one we've been genuinely buzzing about because we're talking about working in agencies and agency life. And look, when people think about working in media, they often picture working for a big broadcaster or a magazine or the editorial desk. But agencies are where so much of the real action happens. They're the engine rooms, the places where strategy meets creativity, meets commercial reality. So, Joe, would it be helpful for us to set the scene and just clarify what we actually mean about agencies? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all world.
Completely. I think that when I was at school or at uni and people talked about working for an agency, what they meant was working in the kinds of full-service branded agency as an account manager. And those roles do definitely still exist. It's just a different type of role from typically the kind of commercially orientated agency world that you and I are most familiar with. Going back many years now, agencies divided into those that looked after perhaps the branding, those that looked after media, and those that looked after now what is a whole myriad of other things, whether that's social or creative or digital. Just to clarify, within the context of media agencies, you have what is essentially or has always been the big six or five as it is now, the holding companies. So the likes of Group M, the publicist agencies, the Omnicom agencies, and then you've got independent agencies who are literally much smaller agencies that handle media, usually for niche clients or for certain clients in certain spaces. Under the umbrella of agencies, though, you now also have social agencies, even Amazon agencies. So agencies that literally just look after clients' Amazon business. So the whole agency world has really evolved into a very broad piece right now.
So would it be fair to say that the reason that there's been this explosion in this agency ecosystem is because clients are having more and more streamlining in their marketing function and therefore are really wanting to outsource a lot of their advertising and marketing activities to specialists who can perhaps help them buy at scale and also give extra resources to what would otherwise be quite a strained kind of offering?
I absolutely do think that that's the case, but there is also a background noise thing going on at the moment where an awful lot of clients, especially in the retail sector, are actually forming their own in-house agencies to manage their own media. And so there's so many different things that are pulling on the development of the agency world the whole time. It's a really interesting space.
So within all of the agencies that you recruit for, Joe, what are the sorts of job titles which exist? Because they're going to be very different to the media owner side job titles.
That's such an interesting question because typically people think of account exec, account manager, account director, and those roles are very much still there. It's just about whether or not you're focused on just planner buying or whether you specialize in one of those areas where the job titles can become very different.
So when you're sourcing candidates for agency roles, you're not really just purely looking for people in any kind of account management or business development function. They can be quite specific and quite data driven.
In some cases, it can be, okay, we're looking for somebody who's just got 6 months agency side experience. Doesn't matter what they've been doing, we'll train them up into the next stage. But in many cases, particularly further up the food chain, there are very specific skills and experiences you want.
So do agencies tend to do a lot of in-house training where they can bring in the right raw talent and then they hone it down to the specifics of what they need?
They do. I think one of the challenges is that you can find yourself excited about joining an agency, perhaps as an AV exec, and you rapidly get promoted to an AV manager. And the next step up would be an AV account director, when actually what you'd really like to do is diversify into digital. And so it's really difficult to make sure that you're not pigeonholed too early on in your career.
So do you see more people moving from agency side to client side, or agency side to media owner side, or media owner side to agency side? Where's the movement?
So historically, the two things were sort of a bit like never the twain shall meet. And if you started off in one thing, you didn't go to the other thing. Of late, I would say that particularly in the digital space, there are certainly more cases of people moving from agency side to media owner. And not just in the digital space, but also in the social world as well.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm wondering whether you'll be able to answer this, but is there a differential in terms of salary expectations, agency side or media owner side? And is there a difference in terms of lifestyle?
So historically, and probably still to some great extent, agency side roles do not pay as much money as media owner roles. And that has been one of the drivers for people to want to move from one thing to the other. However, the skill set and drivers that you need to work media owner side as a salesperson are often a little bit different from the ones that you really need at an agency.
And are most agencies back in their offices? Because the office for an agency is a big part of their culture. And traditionally, shiny offices in city centres. What's the hybrid situation in agencies?
So let's talk about that, because it is a thing. The big holding companies, not all of them, but some of them, all declared that they wanted people back in the office 4 days a week as a minimum. Some agencies have said 5. The independent agencies are still managing perfectly well with 2 or 3. And actually, I do think that makes a really big difference as to who people want to work with and how they can operate. It's sometimes difficult to equate a career at a media owner with a career at agency side, because for me, I look at both the opportunities on either side and think they're different, but they're both really exciting, and both, without one, the other doesn't work. And they're both fantastic in terms of how you can build a career. If I'd have known, when I started out, I didn't know the first thing about media owners or agencies. And if I'd have known about them when I was younger, I definitely would have wanted to have a go.
That's interesting. So, Jo, when you're recruiting for the independent agencies, how distinct are the individual cultures that those agencies create? And does that drive your decisions in terms of which candidates to be pointing in which directions?
It's like media owners, really. They are different. They are different because of the people who work in them and by the culture that has been driven through the leadership in any of those businesses. They have synergies and similarities. So just because somebody's right for company A doesn't mean they're not right for company B, but it means they might not be right for every company. And there might be some things that are very distinctive. And equally, if you're a candidate, you might want to work on clients in tech or pharmaceuticals, or you might want to work for clients who are in the entertainment industry.
Jo, you mentioned earlier that there's this growing group of niche agencies. I wasn't completely clear who the players are in that space. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So you've got specialist agencies in the Amazon world, like Acorn Eye and We Are Liberty Digital. And then you've got specialist social agencies like Jungle Creations, Born Social, the Goat Agency. There's also experiential agencies that just deal with a very specific area. I think that the scope for building a career is just massive. I said the hardest thing, just going back to what I said at the beginning, is getting the exposure to the different things early on in your career so you're equipped to make a decision about which direction you want to go in.
Just to let you know, if you want an easy way to remember and apply the ideas from today's episode, we've got something to help. Head over to makingitinmedia.com and sign up for our newsletter. After every episode, we'll send you the key insights and practical takeaways that you can use to help you get hired, stay inspired, and build a successful career in media. That's makingitinmedia.com, and the link's in the show notes. Now, back to the episode.
So today's experts, Debra, are very exciting. We're being joined by Lisa Morgan, who is Group MD at Generation Media, a rapidly growing indie agency, and also by Sarah Chappell, who is Commercial Director at Guerrillascope, another fab indie agency.
Looking forward to speaking to them.
Hey, Lisa. So welcome to our podcast. Yeah, it's really nice to have you on board. We're going to ask you a few questions today about what it's really like to work agency side and a few other things along the way. And the first question is really, how did you get into working at an ad agency? What really drew you to it?
Great. Well, thank you, Joe, for having me first and foremost. For myself, I think I always had an interest in kind of what motivates and influences people. So even at an A-level stage, I was doing social biology, psychology, media, and that led me to doing an advertising and marketing degree at Bournemouth. And my sister actually had already graduated and was building a successful career at Zenith as part of the insight department. So media agency world wasn't unknown to me through that link. And funnily enough, it's actually manifested itself in a different way, because obviously my early career was about understanding consumers and consumer behavior, whereas now I more apply that to kind of leadership and managing people and clients. So yeah, it's interesting that you can put that kind of skill, but in different parts as you go through your career.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the big difference between working for a holding company and indie agency?
I think it's very different experience. I think both have their benefits and their roles. I'd say for myself personally, networks is kind of where I learned my trade, and that kind of had that wider exposure to the broader industry. Whereas at an independent, I think I've had a lot more insight into the commercial runnings of a business and been able to accelerate my career into a leadership position through growth and development of the business. I think sometimes at media agencies, it can sometimes feel like you're a bit of a cog in a wheel and just a number. Whereas I think that's probably the biggest difference, especially at an entry level, that people feel that they're actually valued for the work they're undertaking and recognized for that work as well.
So do you think that the agency landscape has changed a lot in the time that you've been working in this space?
Yeah, it certainly has changed. I think if I told you that I actually got my first job through seeing a coloured ad in The Guardian in the Monday media section, that probably gives you a footprint of where I came into the agency world. Your first instinct is that everything's changed. Some of the core elements haven't really. The biggest shift is obviously digital is very much in its infancy. Mobile advertising didn't exist at that point in time. So that's obviously been the biggest shift, but that's just been an additional channel whilst the others have remained relatively stable.
One of the things that clients or that our listeners really don't always understand is how agencies actually win clients. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us something about the pitch process and what that's really like?
Yeah, it really can vary. There's no one size fits all. So sometimes you're working through an intermediary, so someone who's actually running a pitch process on behalf of a client and connecting the client and agency together. Sometimes it can be run by procurement, which could be in-house procurement at the client, or sometimes it can just be run by a marketing team off their own backs. So I think that the approach tends to adjust slightly depending on what route you're going down. And I think because we're working in a specialist, narrower field, I think for us that relationship building part is even more essential. It is a tough process going through pitching, but really it's where the agency's best work comes out, and then that's something that can be used across the agency. And I think being chosen to be part of a new business process, I think, is a real honor, and I think it's some of where your best learnings can happen.
So would you say that the new business side of agency life is a strong sales role? I mean, we talk a lot about sales skills and transferable sales skills. Do people in agencies describe themselves as being sellers?
Yeah, I think we are sellers, because we have to have conviction in our ideas, and we have to project those and get other people to buy into them. We have to have conviction to do that. What clients want to see more and more of, which I'm sure we'll come on to discuss, is it's not really about the buying process anymore. Media is pretty much commoditized. If not now, it definitely will be once all the AI processes are fully rolled out. So where is it that we add our value? It's like in that thinking part of the pie.
It'd be interesting to explore how you see that working out. What does that feel like day to day?
I think just in AI in general, what it puts the team under pressure of is actually it's not about taking the human element out, it's training the team and upskilling them so that they can divert that time they were spending in a process-led job into a more critical thinking job that benefits the clients and the business, and almost like a think different, so that we're prepping people for the future as well.
So there's an awful lot of agency people who are really worrying about whether the jobs are going to be there, and particularly the entry level roles, that are typically quite process-led, as you said. Do you think there'll always be jobs in agencies for people?
I mean, personally, I think they will. I mean, firstly, one thing we've done really well as a business, this is down to our CEO, is very early on, he created a succession plan. Now, if you don't take on entry level or middle management, where are you going to get your succession planning from? And what's really interesting, so last year we ran a grad day. We actually took on 5 interns for a 5-month period. We ended up keeping every single one of them on into this year in full-time positions. And one of the main reasons was, actually, these guys don't know any other way of doing it. So you bring them in just as we were starting our automation process, and all they've learned is that way of doing it. So they've been the earliest adopters of the things we're trying to do as a business.
So if you take a general snapshot of agencies now and your view of the next couple of years, what do you think are going to be the biggest trends?
I think the bit probably that we haven't seen come through yet is, I think, once AI is reaching its full potential in terms of that process-led element, I think the agency structure will simplify a lot. Obviously, we have like teams for every channel, and we have data scientists, and we have all of these components making up. So the more that we can bring all those areas together into single systems, we should be able to simplify the team structure. So I think that's the bit probably that we'll see the most change on once the AI is fully up to speed. Again, I think I've already just mentioned this, but being paid for what we think rather than what we do. So almost a change to a more consultative methodology as things evolve. I think that's probably the direction things will move in more for agencies.
So for somebody starting out, you still think that the agency world is a pretty exciting place to go?
Oh God, yeah. If you like change, excitement, no 2 days the same, then 100%. I think I feel very privileged personally to have a job that I can be excited to go into. And of course, there's highs and lows. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it, but I think the key is understanding that it's a career, not just a job.
It's going to lead Jo towards her favourite signature question. It's coming up.
I am. Yes, our signature question. What's been your best yes, Lisa? Something that stands out for you, whether it's personal or professional, that is the best yes you've ever had?
Well, I'd have to say saying yes to my husband, because otherwise I might not have a husband anymore. But apart from that, I think just thinking more from a career perspective, I guess going back to that coloured ad I saw in The Guardian, if I hadn't said yes to applying to it, hadn't been accepted for the role and hadn't said yes to the role, I'd be in a very different position to what I'm in now. So I'll be forever grateful for the day that I sat down with my mum at the pub and saw the ad and acted on it.
It never leaves you the way that you feel when you do something like that, does it? That's really cool.
So Lisa gave us a fascinating perspective on how agencies are evolving and the opportunities they can create throughout a career. Next, we're joined by Sarah Chappell from Guerrillascope, another leading indie agency.
Hey, Sarah, so lovely to have you on today with us. How would you describe a typical day in your role? Is there actually a typical day?
In short, no. That is the benefit of working for an independent media agency itself. You are working across so many different clients, so many different media channels. There is no typical day. Even just yesterday, I think I started the day by talking to one of our clients about how we're growing fandom for this global motorsport around various different territories. I then moved on to a meeting with a travel sector client, and the conversation was the strategy with media with the crisis going on in the Middle East at the moment. Then, I didn't expect this one yesterday, but we were then talking with a confectionery brand about how to navigate the new HFSS rulings for an out-of-home campaign. We then had a media owner that came into our agency, as they regularly do. It's our job to make sure we're kept up to date with all the innovations with media. So, we went straight into the opportunities across the streaming and creative production for a particular media owner in the TV space. So there isn't a typical day. It's fast paced, but you never get bored. That's what I always say. No day is the same.
And do you think it's as diverse for somebody who's just sort of starting out and joining you? Do they get an eclectic mix of things to work on as well?
Because we're a small independent agency, it is very entrepreneurial. We're a big believer to give as much exposure to even entry-level people right through the business.
And I guess what's really interesting about Guerrillascope is the space that you're in and how fast everything is changing. How do you navigate all of the innovations and the shifts that are happening in your space?
I think first and foremost, it's our job to simplify all the complexities in the ever fragmenting media landscape. It's actually, if we talk about maybe TV and connected TV, streaming, VOD, we've actually taken that fragmentation as an advantage for us. I think because, again, we're an independent agency, when it used to be a very consolidated TV market, now there are so many different ways of media consumption and different audiences in different places. So it's our job to understand where the audiences are, because we aren't committed and we're very to one particular media owner. We have the autonomy to, be trying these different platforms, et cetera, and putting forward the right solution for the client. So it allows us, I suppose, this fragmentation to be much more targeted.
Does that mean that the client briefing process has changed? That actually what you're being challenged to do for your clients is to provide measurable solutions. How do you balance that with what's really a very creative medium? How does that work?
There is a balance, of course. It depends on what a particular objective is for a client. So if it is response and direct return, immediate sales, if you will, then there will be a data-led KPIs around that. The good news is over my career anyway, I've seen almost a full circle where more and more brands now do understand the importance of brand campaigns as well. They understand that sometimes it's the longer game that isn't that immediate performance data, and it takes time to move a dial when it comes to consumer perception of a brand or familiarity of a brand. So I think brands are understanding that more and more these days. So we address both probably in 99% of the briefs we receive.
It's interesting. You just talked about your career, and obviously you've been agency side for a long time, and things have changed massively. Do you think that the skills that you're looking for somebody joining you have changed, and are there things that are non-negotiable now that are important?
The fundamentals have probably stayed the same, but more and more now, I always say to our recruits, our team, the two things you really need to do well and be successful in media is commercial thinking. So providing a service, planning and buying media is not just what we do anymore. It's having a commercial understanding of a client's business and the true problem they're trying to solve. Media solutions then can be applied to do that. And I'd say the second, even more so, storytelling. If someone said to me 20 years ago, how are you at storytelling? I'll be thinking, not so sure. Without storytelling, it's very difficult to land a media strategy. That storytelling will go back to that commercial understanding, but the story brings a strategy to life, and that's what helps it land.
We did have a listener who sent in a question which is sort of related to this part of the conversation, because they said that they went for an interview with an agency, and there was a question around pitching. And they completely froze because they weren't quite sure what makes a good agency pitch. So I was just wondering whether you've got any suggestions as to what the pitch process looks like, and perhaps what skills you're looking for from somebody who would be taking on that role.
My entire career has been in business development, so I know how that person feels. I think the first thing to know is a pitch process, although very different, each very unique, it's a very collaborative process. So the pressure, win or fail, is not just on one individual's shoulders. I don't think anyone should hear the word pitch and be that nervous, because a pitch, a long time ago would have been a judgment of one person on an individual basis. Now it's very collaborative, and the support there from all the people you work with.
So from your own personal point of view, what's the campaign that you've worked on that you're most proud of?
There's so many, but there have been a few recent ones. Sol de Janeiro, a beauty brand. I don't know whether you've heard of it or not. Huge in the US, but only just came to the UK a few years ago. It was a complete challenger brand, and to turn that challenger brand into what is now a household name for their target audience was a real achievement. We grew non-aided brand awareness by 11% in about a 9-month period. And that's pretty challenging to achieve. So to see Sol de Janeiro up on lights on the bus, to then on the TV screen, to the front cover of a magazine, it helps that the brand is beautiful and all about Brazilian beauty and empowering women. So I think that was a really exciting campaign that we delivered.
Just while we've been chatting, there's one thing that I just suddenly thought of that I wanted to ask you along the way. If you were somebody just going into media right now, there are so many different job titles that sometimes it's quite difficult to understand what the different jobs are. And so for somebody looking at the industry, how would you suggest that they kind of research that kind of thing? And is there a better way or a better job title to think or to go in at this stage, do you think?
I suppose a few considerations. As I say, I started my career in media and business development and have not deviated. I think, if you do want to be more at the front facing of a business, then that is one avenue. The other avenue is if someone's more interested in developing a longer term partnership with a smaller number of clients and really getting under the skin of that brand and feeling responsible for the success of that brand's growth through advertising, that would be an account manager line. And then I'd say, the media as well. So we come across people all the time who some might really only have a passion for radio, for example, or audio in general, and they want to specialize in that.
I've been interested, as you've been speaking, Sarah, you've used the word challenge quite a few times, that, you've got challenge the brands, you've got people who are, maybe sometimes challenging the client in their thinking, and then bringing in people with the commercial skills to be able to tell a story that might be different to the story that the client is waiting to hear. But I was just interested in that because, we're all operating in a fairly tough economic landscape. It takes quite a lot of courage to challenge a client's thinking. Do you see that as being a very key part of the role of the agency?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it doesn't always work out like this, but I'm sure any agency would agree that the strongest agency-client relationships are those that are seen more of a partnership as opposed to a customer and a service provider. If you have that relationship, I think, challenging anything, that makes business sense, again, backed by proved accountable data, it's actually quite a natural conversation to have. I think most clients appreciate that. Our clients know their product, their brand more than we do. I'd argue that we know how their audience consumes media more than they do. So together, it takes both sides in a partnership.
Very interesting.
So our last question, Sarah, is the one that we ask everybody, which is, what's been the best yes that you've ever had?
If I am being honest, it does come back to this more relationship with the client. If you can work with a brand that you can see you're very in sync with, what growth looks like and how to achieve that and how to make media work harder for that brand. If there's that understanding from the outset, I think that's the best yes. The most recent yes, which was a bit of a brand I've wanted to work with for many, many years, was Kuoni. Travel, and again, I think it was really the rapport we had with the team there at Kuoni, and the fact that they completely understood what we were proposing and agreed, and even round that pitch scenario there was additional brainstorming happening about what else and what about. So I think that collaboration, again, that partnership creates the best yes, because it's built on respect and trust.
This episode's Yes List recommendation is the book Influence by Robert Cialdini, a must-read if you're working in agencies. First published in 1984 and recently updated in 2021, it breaks down 6 key principles that drive decision-making: reciprocity, consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity, all of which show up every day in client work. You'll recognize moments like when a client leans on what a competitor is doing. That's social proof. Or when small initial agreements lead to bigger commitments. That's consistency. Cialdini explains how these patterns work and, more importantly, how to apply them ethically in your pitches, presentations, and negotiations. For anyone navigating client relationships, selling ideas, or trying to get buy-in internally, this book gives you a real strategic advantage. It's not about being pushy. It's about understanding how decisions actually get made and using that insight to communicate more effectively in a fast-paced agency environment.
Thanks for listening to It's a Yes, Making It in Media. Do follow the show and share it with someone who's serious about getting results in their media career. Send us your questions to hello@makingitinmedia.com. We're running a live and interactive Zoom training workshop very soon.
The links are in the show notes.